Okay, call this meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. A virtual meeting of the MAG Executive Committee is called to order. Melissa, would you take attendance to confirm our quorum, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members of the committee, I'll call your name. Please unmute and indicate if you're present for the record. Mayor Gallego? Mayor Giles?
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Peterson? Mayor Weiss?
Here.
Thank you. And our chairman is present, so a quorum is present.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Okay, a call to the audience. We have no speaker cards, so we don't need to do that, correct?
There are no speaker cards.
Okay, awesome. We're going to move on to our agenda. Item number 3, approval of the consent agenda. Committee members may request an item be removed from the consent agenda. Prior to the action on the consent agenda, members of the audience be provided an opportunity to comment on the consent agenda items that are marked with an asterisk. Approval of consent agenda items 3A through 3D are on the agenda. As an update, items 3B and 3C were recommended for approval by the Management Committee on April 14. Any member of the committee have any questions or would like a presentation of any of the items separately? Hearing none. We have no speaker cards, so we don't have to worry about that. Can I get a motion to recommend approval of the consent agenda items 3A through 3D?
Mr. Chair, it's Ken Weiss. I'll make the motion.
Kevin Hartke, second.
Okay, I have a motion from Mayor Weiss, a second from Mayor Hartke. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Melissa, can you go ahead and take a vote on that motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will call your name. Please indicate how you vote. Mayor Gallego?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Giles?
Aye. Aye.
Mayor Hartke? Oh, thank you, Mayor Giles. Mayor Hartke?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Peterson?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss?
Aye.
Thank you. And Chairman Wires?
Vote aye. It sounds like we have a full slate. Good.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to items to be heard. Item 4 is funding the homeless initiative. MAG Deputy Director Amy St. Peter will begin a presentation. And following that, we'll have discussion. Amy?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for this opportunity to provide you with an update on our efforts to address homelessness on a regional level. We appreciate your partnership as well as your patience as we have conducted extensive outreach as well as our research. Just since January, we have reached more than 1,000 people through the outreach forums. I do want to thank you for coming to and for presenting at the elected official forum that was held last week. It was really, really important to have all of you there. Thank you very much for your participation. Since last fall, we have completed 5 different studies so we can better understand the local and national best practices in terms of how we can address this critical issue, how to fund these efforts, and how to cite these new homeless assistance programs that will hopefully be launched throughout the entire region. As we have completed our outreach and research, we are excited now to pivot to action based on these lessons learned. This work was possible in large part thanks to your municipal human services directors and staff. We thank them very much and thank you for your support throughout this entire process as we strive to align these regional efforts with your local priorities. All of the material that's been developed so far as a result of these efforts is available and will remain available to you on an ongoing basis. These materials have been posted on the MAG website. In the very near future, we will have Hand Up, which is our new interactive mapping tool that illustrates the locations of assets used to help people who are experiencing homelessness, as well as the people needing these programs and their locations. One of the newer tools that we're using right now to assist your local communities as well as these regional efforts are a set of projection tools that we can use to calculate the number of housing units and shelter beds that will be needed throughout the region. We are forming a technical assistance group to make sure that your communities can use these tools as you wish and as is helpful. And we are definitely using these at that regional level. Our goal in all of this work then is to make sure that these regional efforts do result in the reduction of the numbers of people who are experiencing homelessness, that we're able to expand the geographic footprint of these homeless assistance programs, and they're able to strengthen that safety net then for all people. And in regard to all people, we are absolutely continuing our commitment to racial equity and to fully integrating the voices of people with lived experience throughout all of this work by leveraging the work that had been started previously by the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care through the Racial Equity Plan and is adapted to and integrated with the regional portfolio of strategies that will be coming to you next month for your approval. At last month's Regional Council meeting, there was a request for us to provide you with a report on the funding that will be needed to implement these 14 different strategies. We have been very focused on funding since the beginning of these efforts just last fall. And Sapna Gupta is my colleague, and she's here today to represent our policy team and to present you with an update on the municipal expenditure study that was just conducted under her leadership in partnership with Applied Economics. Sapna will also be presenting some of the analysis that was conducted by the Arizona Housing Coalition in regard to the COVID relief funding that is coming to our region. So we're excited to be able to share this with you after Sapna's presentation. We do have an update on the next steps that we're taking as a result of the discussion at just last week's MAG Management Committee meeting. It's my pleasure now to introduce Sapna Gupta for a report on the municipal expenditure survey data. Sapna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
We have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sapna, are you available to give your presentation?
Say it again, Amy.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering if Sapna is available to give her presentation now on the municipal expenditure study. And of course, we would be happy to entertain any questions that that you or the committee members might have regarding my brief comments this morning.
Amy, it's Craig. It looks like Sapna's muted.
Okay. Sapna, if you can unmute. Otherwise,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Oh,
Can you
there
hear
you
me
are.
now?
Okay. Yes, Sapna. Floor is yours.
Okay, good. I had joined by phone, but I was trying to unmute that way. So sorry about that. So thank you very much, Amy. And members of the Executive Committee and Mr. Chairman. This analysis was developed with Sarah Murley from Applied Economics, and we're very grateful for the assistance and feedback from your teams during the course of this work. The goal of this survey is to give an understanding of the regional investment as a foundation and context for additional investment. We need to know how much we're spending now as a context for how much we will need to spend to implement the strategies that will be proposed next month. This will help us take action and allows the region to develop a common understanding of how funds are being spent and what expenditures are being incurred by which departments. This study helps us get there. Next slide, please. The survey results reflect responses by 16 municipalities and Maricopa County and Pinal County, representing about 95% of the region's population. They do not include MCSO and criminal justice expenditures. The numbers here include the usage of COVID relief funds to respond to the pandemic emergency. In this presentation, I'll be talking first about municipal expenditures and then expenditures by other departments. We will review the total expenditures across the region, and I will describe an online tracking tool for allocations for housing and homelessness from COVID relief funds. Next slide, please. This slide shows how the almost 50 million in expenditures are apportioned among the different housing programs, including shelter. As you can see, the largest proportion went toward temporary bridge housing. Next slide, please. This $60 million includes categories that encompass services to people experiencing homelessness and other low-income people, and includes homelessness prevention, which was bolstered last year by the pandemic relief funding. For example, utility and rental assistance are important services that can prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. Next slide, please. The total number on this slide is less than the actual amount because there's no consistent framework yet to track how much of the expenditures are incurred responding to homelessness-driven needs. And it does not include MCSO yet. This highlights an opportunity to adopt a common framework for tracking these expenditures, which would allow us to fully understand the region's needs. Working towards this common framework allows for an apples-to-apples comparison. We plan to follow up with the municipalities to develop a number that is consistent. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the survey results. As you can see, by far the two largest categories are housing programs, including emergency shelter, and services, which include prevention services. We expect the departmental expenditures proportion to increase once we incorporate the numbers from MCSO. Next slide, please. Now we have discussed the initial findings from the expenditure study. Understanding the federal COVID relief dollars coming into our communities and how they can be deployed is important for future decision-making. The Arizona Housing Coalition has developed an online tool that tracks COVID relief funds allocated to housing and homelessness. Their Director of Policy, Joanna Carr, will be presenting on it at the Regional Council meeting next week. Some of this relief funding has been spent and some of it has been obligated, but some of it has not. So there is an opportunity to guide how these funds can be used to bolster existing investment that communities have already made and how to make new ones as a region. Next slide, please. The last slide shows the breakdown in ARPA relief funding for housing and homelessness expected to come to the region. The proposed infrastructure bill may be able to bring additional funds, and we're working with members of the Regional Collaborative on Homelessness to identify funding from other sources that can be deployed for housing and homelessness. Next slide, please. In conclusion, this expenditure study is a baseline necessary effort in order to plan the next steps in addressing homelessness on a regional basis. Information on these expenditures hasn't been mapped out this way before. This is the first step in developing a regional understanding of where and how funds are being spent. The study has highlighted the opportunity for the region to coordinate how expenditures on homelessness are being measured and categorized so that we're making apples to apples comparisons when looking at expenditures and planning future investments. The online tracker tool can help identify how and where funds from COVID relief are allocated. This will help us develop effective regional strategies, a portfolio of which will be proposed next month, as Amy has mentioned. Mr. Chairman and members of the Executive Committee, this concludes my presentation. Amy, the floor is yours again.
Thank you very much, Sapna. And Mr. Chairman, if I may offer just a few more comments. Thank you very much. So moving forward, we are very excited to be able to pivot to action as we're considering all these different possible funding sources to be able to implement these strategies very successfully. We are in the process right now of developing a cost analysis on a few different levels. One, we're developing that cost analysis on the basis of the tactics and the strategies that are being proposed as part of that regional portfolio. We're also in the process of developing a cost analysis on the basis of the shelter beds and the housing units that are projected to be needed throughout the entire region. So all of these different pieces of data then will roll up into one regional funding target that can be discussed and considered as we move forward with this work. We will also be developing a few of the scenarios to be able to illustrate how this funding could be spent in varying levels, as well as having having a range of options then available with these different scenarios. And so the scenarios, the portfolio, and the regional funding target then would be offered for your action and for your consideration next month. Following action by the Regional Council, we'll proceed with a capstone event on June 10th. We do hope that you'll join us. At that event, we'll be breaking down the barriers and building the bridges then so that we can make sure that we implement all of these strategies very, very successfully and in a sustainable way. So we're eager to work with you. I want to thank you for all of your feedback, your questions, your communication throughout this process has really been critical. So again, thank you so much for your partnership. That does conclude our presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions or comments that you might have. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good job. Any questions from our committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Les Peterson from Carefree.
Go ahead.
And thank you. A lot of what we've discussed are for people who are already homeless. How about, is there anything to be gained in your experience, and you're a lot closer to this than I am, by going further upstream with social services to prevent people from getting into the homeless situation?
Mr. Chairman and Mayor Peterson and members of the executive committee, absolutely, prevention is very much a focus in these efforts, as is the diversion efforts, and both of those are really critical. You are correct in that homeless initiatives don't always include diversion and prevention, but they are absolutely critical for this region moving forward. We want to make sure that we are diverting people away from experiencing homelessness in the first place, and that we're able to prevent that. It's more cost effective, it's more humane, it's just more effective on a number of different levels. So we have 5 different categories in which those strategies are being developed, and diversion and prevention is one of those. And so when we're looking at something like rental assistance, for example, that can be used to keep someone in their home. It can also be used to help them enter into a rental unit. And so we're looking at that service at both ends of the spectrum, making sure that we're able to help people no matter where they're at in that process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Mayor Giles.
Go ahead,
I
sir.
appreciate this report. It seems like this report was telling us how much currently the region is spending on homelessness, correct? I didn't see that it really edified us on what the source of those funds are. I mean, where is that money coming from currently?
Mayor Giles, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, we do have that data. And perhaps if Sapna wants to weigh in on that, we're basically looking at 3 different categories of funding. One is the federal funding that is more formula-based, which doesn't necessarily allow for choices to be made. The second category of funding then would be the federal funding that is received, such as the Community Development Block Grant, which has broader parameters for spending, and choices are being made. That funding can be allocated for housing and homelessness, or it can be allocated for a number of different funding eligible activities. And then the third category of funding then is the general funds. And so absolutely choices, and sometimes very difficult choices, are being made by communities in terms of how they use their general funds. And so we've been able to track the information community by community by the individual funding source. And we have not yet heard from all communities though. And so we're striving to gain a complete regional picture of that. Sapna, would you care to weigh in on anything else related to that question?
Yes, thank you, Amy. And Mayor Giles, this is an important question. So we have, through this expenditure study, seen that general funds are one source of funding, but the vast majority of funding comes from the federal government. And because of last year and the pandemic, there were quite a large percentage of funds actually that came through COVID relief funding. A lot of it was to keep people housed, which is rental assistance and utility assistance. But one thing that this study does do is, as I mentioned, is establish a baseline. And the next step also is understanding the role that philanthropy plays and the high level of funding that comes by the nonprofits, the services that they provide. This was the starting point to get an understanding of where are the cities getting their funding from. And so we do have that expenditure study. I didn't put it in this slide, but in the regional council meeting, I will put a slide that will show the proportions coming from federal funds, whether it's coming from HUD and COVID relief funding, and what is coming from the cities as well.
In our meeting last week, I think there was some comment on the idea that different cities are participating disproportionately, and some perhaps are not participating in a meaningful way. And I don't want to embarrass, other cities or shame them, or I'm sensitive to that. Let's avoid doing that. But on the other hand, that's relevant information, and somehow we need to put that out on the table, particularly if we're going to talk about the awkward question of how we change our funding, and we're going to invite communities that to this point haven't felt the need to dedicate funds to this topic to join a regional effort to do that. So I don't really see this as teeing that topic up. Again, I'd like to do it. I don't want to do it in a provocative way, but I think we do need to address that elephant in the room, as to who's paying and who's not. And that invites the question of, do we want to change that model? But the next part of my question, I guess, would be, do we have proposals from MAG staff as to how do what's the next step? How do we step up as a region and come up with the additional funding to address this problem? It's my understanding that at the managers meeting last week, there was some discussion that of a proposal to dedicate a portion of the American Rescue Plan funds that all of us are going to be receiving to this cause. I don't remember hearing another plan, before or after that. So is that currently the only plan that's being discussed, or are there other ideas being circulated?
Thank you very much, Mayor Giles, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I'd like to offer my thoughts on those two questions, and then if Sapna has any feedback on that as well, then I encourage her to jump in. First, in regard to your question about how do we encourage each community then to really undertake regional ownership of this issue with confirmed funding commitments, which is a critical issue. We know that homelessness is inherently regional, and solutions also need to be regional in order to really effectively be able to make progress in this space. Part of the challenge that we're facing right now is that we don't yet share a common definition of what these costs are, how they're incurred, how they're tracked, and then how they're then analyzed. So as Sapna had mentioned, this is a starting point for discussion. And so, for example, we sent out the same survey to all communities. 15 to 17 of them responded, but in looking at the data, it's apparent that they've responded with different definitions in mind. So we do need to be able to ensure that we have a common understanding of what these costs are and how they're incurred, what kinds of funding sources could be brought to bear. And then we need to make sure that we're consistently collecting that data. We have yet to hear from some communities at all, so it's difficult to know what levels of investment they're currently making. And so we are continuing to reach out, and we encourage all communities, if they have not yet responded, to please do so, and we're happy to provide any kind of technical assistance. So yes, absolutely, we do need to work very closely with communities. We are hearing that some communities are setting aside funding right now, even before we set that regional funding target. And so I do think that's promising. A lot more discussion needs to be held, obviously, and we are committed to having those conversations and to providing that support throughout this process. And in regard to your second question about the proposals, absolutely, we're in the process right now of developing what that regional funding target would be. There are some figures that were offered. I think that's a great starting place for discussion. We're working with the data to understand the cost analyses and to use data then to develop that regional funding target. So we can offer that during the committee cycle meetings next month. In terms of a proposal, in terms of how we might use those funds, one of the strategies that's in the current portfolio right now that we're wanting to move forward with very expeditiously is having coordination and particularly working with the communities that are already engaged in discussions such as Maricopa County, Phoenix, Mesa. A number of communities have been talking about coordinating around the expenditures related to the COVID funding that's been received by this region for the relief efforts. Particularly when we look at the second year of the ARPA funding, there are some opportunities, particularly there, because that funding has not yet been allocated necessarily. And so we're wanting to make sure that we're coordinating with the efforts that are underway right now. We do also have other funding opportunities though. So for example, both Medicaid and Medicare insurers are allocating funding for housing, because one of the biggest social determinants to health is housing, of course. And so Medicaid and Medicare both are allocating millions of dollars, and that's not being reflected necessarily as part of the homeless assistance planning that's underway right now. So we're wanting to look to existing funding sources that maybe aren't being fully leveraged. We want to make sure that we're coordinating around the funding that will be coming into the region and is coming into the region right now. We're also coordinating with our foundation partners, with philanthropy, because they're very interested in assisting with these efforts. I've been hearing about efforts that are very imminent, or that are imminently going to be launched very soon, particularly around affordable housing, with significant support from foundations, from both the corporate side as well as the nonprofit side. So there's a lot of entities working in this space right now, and we are reaching out to all of them and working very closely to coordinate these efforts to position the region in the best way possible. Sapna, do you have anything that you'd care to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize the point that we are going back to the cities to make sure that we are comparing apples to apples and confirming the numbers with each city. And we are hoping that in the next couple of weeks, we will be able to get 100% response rates for the survey. And as Amy mentioned, having this foundational knowledge, being able to have a knowledge of how many funds are coming from what source and being spent where and how, is going to form the foundation of this. And in terms of the solutions that Amy mentioned, in terms of the portfolio of strategies, we will be determining the sources of funding for those. And as Amy mentioned, ARPA funds will be playing a big role, and some of the unobligated and unallocated funds from the recent COVID relief funding as well. So we do understand that timing is very important, and we will be following up with the cities in the next couple of weeks to make sure that we're lining up not only an understanding of where the expenditures are, but what type of funding is coming in. And I think this COVID relief tracking tool is really important. It's actually a statewide tool, and it provides a common understanding of what types of COVID relief funding has come through per jurisdiction and what the source of that funding tranche is. And so we're using these resources as well as the resources that Amy mentioned, which is, are there Medicare funds? And we are also within the regional collaborative on homelessness, working with partners in philanthropy and with service and within the nonprofit community to understand how can we combine these funds and deploy them again on a regional basis. So it's a combination of collecting the data, analyzing it, and having a deeper understanding of the different types of funding that are available. And we look forward to following up with you on that.
Okay, thank you. I know, I'm sure MAG staff has been diligent in requesting this information. It sounds like you've gotten, in some cases, a disappointing response from some of the communities, and I think we need to address that, at the regional council meeting. And again, not in an effort to embarrass anyone, but a part of the challenge here is changing a mindset so that we can get away from a disproportionate, funding. We need to point out that some communities are not participating, and do it in a way just so we can get that issue out there and hopefully motivate them to want to find the resolve to do that. So I think this might be the opportunity. I would hate to see this report given and we just ignore the fact that some communities aren't even sharing their data with us. We have to have that discussion. So I'll ask that question, but when it comes to regional council meeting, but hopefully the presentation will kind of tee that up, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, Mayor Giles, happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think I will echo some of the themes that Mayor Giles raised, but first a thank you to Amy Sapna and the entire team. Amy presented to the Phoenix City Council recently. I know many other city councils have hosted MAG, and if you haven't, I do think it is well worth your time. And thank you, Sapna, for all of this great data. I am certainly just very supportive of the conversation, and thank you to our chair. We've probably had more of these conversations under your tenure than at least to my knowledge before. So moving things forward at a time where it is increasingly important. I think the conversation at Management Committee was valuable, and perhaps doing allocations based on ARP funds does make sense right now, and give us a benchmark that recognizes that some have, well, that there's differential levels of federal resources, but at least it gives us a yardstick I really think it's valuable to do regional coordination. And there were some areas when Mayor Peterson was talking, I thought if we coordinated, we might want to do bigger investments than what SEPNA's data showed. For example, I am a big fan of caseworkers. I think they can help people find resources, get to know them. At least in my experience, I found each individual's path is very unique and their solutions are very unique. And caseworkers to me are often miracle workers. So I understand why we're spending much more in other areas, but that's one where I think across boundaries that will make a lot of sense. And if we coordinate, maybe we can be more strategic. I think it's great to include the philanthropic community and business community. And I would say our faith community is also stepping up in very big ways. And perhaps before we have the full regional council meeting, MAG staff could reach out to the members of the council. Sometimes I think, at least as a mayor, I do not always know if we have filled out our data, and I suspect that is true of my colleagues as well. We're grateful that the departments are filling it out, but sometimes if we're not the one doing it ourselves, one can lose track. And so to me, that would be valuable. But it does seem like the need is greater and the resources are greater. So this is a really important time to get things done. Our residents clearly want us to do so, and we can meaningfully help people. There's so much reward in helping someone find a stable housing situation and success. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Totally off subject, but I want to thank Mayor Gallego for helping me out, standing in for me when I was gone. So I appreciate that very much. With that, there is no action required on this subject today. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make one comment, this is Les Peterson.
Go ahead, sir.
Listening to the conversation and the discussion with Mayor Giles and Mayor Gallego, let me give you an example. In Carefree, we have very few homeless. So for me to talk to the residents up there, they'll say it's a problem I don't have. But let me ask, is it possible to do a projection that if unchecked, here's where the homeless sites may be 10 years out from today? It would give some sense of urgency that we don't want this to spread throughout the valley. Can you develop some demographic characteristics or characteristics of neighborhoods where people might congregate to show where this might spread? And that might be helpful to me.
Mayor Peterson, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, thank you very much for that question. We would be happy to look into if we have the data that would support that kind of analysis. That might take a little bit of a longer lead time because I'm not sure if we have the data on hand, but we would be happy to look at the methodology that we might be able to use to calculate an appropriate number, as well as to look at where the populations might increase. So we will look for possible options for being able to undertake that analysis. I'm not sure what we have on hand right now, but this might also speak to your question though. And so we often look at the population that is at risk. And so, for example, people don't always think about the population at risk in terms of their neighbors. You could have, for an example, a married couple both living on a fixed income with a pension. One of the spouses passes away, that leaves one spouse with one pension, and they might not be able to pay for the living expenses anymore. We're also hearing about people who are house rich and cash poor, and so they might live in a very lovely home in an affluent area, but when their income starts to decline, they're no longer able to afford the taxes, for example, and the monthly living expenses. And so part of this, as well as kind of an education campaign around what factors might contribute to someone losing their homes, particularly when people might not think of that in the first place. And so with Hand Up, with that interactive map, we're showing the populations of people who are at risk as well. And that can be a very good indicator of if people don't receive assistance, that at-risk population, a good number of them will at some point experience homelessness. And so that kind of opens up the geographic footprint, as well as the numbers of people that we need to be concerned about today. And so
Thank
we
you.
are
That'd
really
be very
striving to
helpful.
make that available. Absolutely. So in terms of the map that will be completed next month, and it will include the population concentrations of people experiencing homelessness today, as well as those who are at risk. I think that might be perhaps the best way to answer your question, at least in the short term, but we're absolutely open to other avenues as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, sir.
I just also wanted to make a quick brief comment to thank Amy and the team for putting together the presentation town hall on Thursday. Since then, another city did reach out to us, and we're going to be getting together just to talk about some faith initiatives that we've been engaged in that they were curious about based on a comment of one of my council members there. So there's the value of information imparted, but also just the opportunity that provided in a narrow sense. And I think there will be more opportunities just to do some networking around this and hear what others are doing. So I just wanted to report that was not only just a great town hall, but there's been follow-up and networking that has occurred as a result of that.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hardkey. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, we do have a report that's being compiled by the Arizona Town Hall. I've reviewed the first draft. They'll be making some changes, and we'll have that posted on the MAG website very soon. We'll also be sending it out as well to the 75 or so people who registered to attend that forum. And we're very happy to be able to share that information and agree that networking around this issue can be extremely helpful. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, no other conversation. I would ask if you're not muted, make sure you mute so we don't get feedback. We'll go ahead and move on to item 5, as the annual performance review of MEG's executive director. Can I get a motion to recess the meeting to conduct an executive session to discuss the MEG executive director performance evaluation?
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion. It's Ken Weiss.
Second, Gallego.
Okay, I have a motion from Mayor Weiss, a second from Mayor Gallego. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. If not, will you take a roll call, please, Melissa?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll call your name. Please indicate your vote on the motion. Mayor Gallego.
Aye.
Thank you, Mayor Giles.
Aye.
Thank you, Mayor Hartkey.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss.
Aye.
Thank you, and Chairman Wires.
Vote aye.
Thank you, and Mayor Hermosillo stepped out. So that motion to go into executive session passes unanimously.
All right, very good, thank you. Okay, so at this point, committee members are the only ones that should press join to enter the breakout room for the executive session. And then following the executive session, members will need to press a button to leave the breakout room and rejoin the regular meeting. So I guess you'll have to tell me when that's done.
Hey, Craig, I don't have a join button.
Did you need to go over there? I wasn't sure. I
Yes.
just thought it was a possibility. Okay, give me 1 second. Assign to executive session.
I think
Okay,
so.
you're all set, Eric.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think I'm supposed,
Sorry.
I think I'm supposed to go in now. I'm not sure.
Hi, Craig. I am Holly Zoe. I'm an attorney in Sam Kaufman's office. So I also need the button to join.
All right, I will get you said Holly.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Craig, I need to go back to executive session. Craig?
Yep, working on that for you right now. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
There. You should still have the ability to do that.
I don't see it anywhere. Where would I?
This says Eric not showing. Why is it not letting you?
Nope.
You don't have a
Don't see
blue.
it.
You don't have a blue button next to
No,
your.
I did
option bar?
before. I don't this time.
Okay. Why? Is it not? I'm not sure why it's not letting you in. Give me a second. So if I hit join, it's going to put me in there, which I do not want to do. Why?
Oh, breakout rooms. There we are.
Okay. You
Got it.
okay.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, no problem at all.
Well, that was easy.
Painless, wasn't it?
Sure was.
Okay, I don't know if we got everybody or not.
It looks like.
Yeah, it looks like everybody's back.
Yep.
All right. So we're reconvening item number 6, possible action on the annual performance review, MEG Executive Director. Is there a motion regarding the MEG Executive Director's performance?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we retain Eric Anderson for the term represented in the agenda, along with the 3.5% annual raise commensurate with that retention.
Okay, we're missing our second.
Come on, Les.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second that motion. I think Eric and the whole organization in a very trying year has done an excellent job, and we look forward to working together with them to achieve our mutual objectives.
All right, Sam, are we good on the motion? Everybody clear on what we're doing?
The motion was clear. I understand it to be a 3.5% increase, and it will be consistent with his. We have used the date of April 9th, 2021 is consistent with his employment agreement, so we can use that for the date.
All right, very good. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. Melissa? And then Melissa, as you're doing a roll call vote, give them an opportunity to explain their vote if they'd like to.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll call your name. Please indicate your vote on the motion. And if you have any other comments, Mayor Gallego.
I vote aye. Eric, thank you for leading MAG through unprecedented times when we continue to be the fastest growing county in the country and have to navigate the investment in the middle of a pandemic. You come to this job with a lot of institutional knowledge, but that doesn't prevent you from trying new things. And it's been neat to see some of our innovative investments, including in transportation technology. We appreciate the data-driven process for planning our 400 extension. And on a more individual level, thank you for responding to some of our priorities in Phoenix, including today's presentation on how we might combat homelessness. I vote aye.
Thank you, Mayor Giles.
Thank you. I vote aye as well. And Eric, just want to echo some of the comments that the Mayor Gallego made a moment ago. This has been a very challenging year for all of us, and it's also made clear the critical role that MAG has to play in our region. And I compliment you and the organization on responding so well, given the tremendous challenges that we've all experienced the last year. I will echo Kate's comment about MAG embracing the homeless issue. I think this is what issues like homelessness are the definition of why we have this organization. So I appreciate MAG understanding that and embracing it, and also obviously the critical role that you play in the Prop 400 extension. So thank you for a job well done, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mayor Giles. Mayor Hartke.
I vote aye and look forward to working with you as we continue with Prop 400 and other regional issues.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson.
Yes, I vote aye as well, and would like to again comment. I've enjoyed working with Eric. I think he's doing an excellent excellent job in trying times, as I had said when I seconded the motion. So thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss.
I vote aye. Eric, I think that you're the right person to lead this organization and to get us over the finish line where we need to be for Prop 500.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman?
I also am going to explain my vote. I do vote aye. A couple minor things that I have no doubt in my mind that Eric will be able to take care of and keep the ship going in the right direction. Been a very challenging year for all of us. MEG's a very big organization with a lot of responsibility, and I think Eric's done a very good job. So, although I'm not really sure why we're doing item number 8 after we do, or I'm sorry, item number 7, because it seemed like we should have done it before we took a vote, but that's fine. With that, I do vote aye, and I'm happy to keep you here for another year.
Thank you.
Thank you. That vote is unanimous.
All right, very good. Okay, moving on to item 7. Again, it seemed like we should have done that before we voted, but Eric.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Executive Committee. So at last month's Executive Committee, we discussed the draft job description. We tuned it up, made some substantial changes to it, broadened it to make sure it covered the entire agency too. So what was in your packet is that revised job description. And this was put on after my evaluation because the job description is intended to provide the groundwork, the foundation for the evaluation for next year. And so I think the next step in this process, once we have your approval on the job description, we'll develop some specific objectives for the next year that can be used in the executive director's evaluation next year at this time.
Any questions? No questions. Okay. Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we approve item number 7.
Kevin Herty,
second.
Okay, I had some people walking on each other. Who was the second?
Ken Weiss.
Okay, so Ken Weiss is making the second. Les Peterson made the motion for item number 7. Any discussion? Hearing none. Melissa, you take the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, I'll call your name. Please indicate your vote on the motion. Mayor Gallego.
Aye.
Thank you, Mayor Giles.
Aye.
Thank you, Mayor Hartke.
yes.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss.
Aye.
And Chairman Wires.
I vote aye.
Thank you, and that vote is unanimous.
All right, very good. Next item is the discussion of development of the fiscal year 22-23 MEG Biennial Unified Planning Work Program and their budget. Amy is going to give a report. Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the MEG Regional Council Executive Committee. MEG is currently in the process of developing the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 MEG Biennial Unified Planning Work Program and Budget. Throughout this process, we presented updates on an incremental basis for your review and discussion since January. This month's presentation is on the draft budget developed to date, which is about 70% complete, and it's been included in the agenda packets for further review. Throughout this month, MEG is working to finalize the remaining 30% of the budget, including the total budgeted personnel costs and the carry forwards. For this month, MEG is recommending a proposed salary increase of 3.5% to be included for both fiscal year 22 and 23, and that any increases to individual MEG salaries be performance-based. Retaining key staff at MEG is essential to continuing quality level work. Accordingly, MEG staff receives an annual performance evaluation every June, and based on their performances for the year may receive a salary increase if one is included in the budget. MEG is also proposing the addition of 5 new positions during the period of fiscal year 22 through 23. The first position is an ITS communications specialist, which is needed to support the regional community network and MEG member agencies with IT and ITS related tasks, including the traffic camera management systems, the RCN network maintenance and support, the fiber optic troubleshooting and maintenance, and various other IT and ITS related support projects, in addition to helping with the help desk and other supporting tasks. The second position is a software engineer 1 or 2 is needed to help the MEG IT development team address their backlog of development tasks and process cross-training and backup support opportunities by creating software development plans and relational database designs, develop, test, implement, and support the existing software and database solutions at MEG, and assist in assessing end user software development and database needs by gathering requirements and creating documentation. The third position is a GIS analyst 1 or 2, which is needed to support the regional analytics division and projects under the partnership with Read on Arizona, Arizona Department of Education, and the SunCloud project. Tasks include development and maintenance of GIS and other databases, including research and collection of data sets. Additionally, this position will conduct spatial analysis, develop maps, and presentations. The fourth position is a transportation engineer 1 and is needed to support proposed program activities and contribute to all required tasks under the transportation data program to better assist MEG RTP goals and fulfill FHWA requirements on transportation data. Anticipated duties include project management, communication, data analysis, data collection, and assistance in fulfillment of data requests. And the fifth and final position is a data analyst 1, which is needed to support the ongoing emerging technologies field pilot and smart region efforts. This position will also support the new innovation travel survey program with duties to include assistance in travel survey design, travel data collection, and data processing, the analysis of and management of travel and traffic data sets, and other duties include perform software development, transportation models, application and maintenance, and preparation of technical reports and project management. The proposal, along with any direction received today, will be included in the completed draft detailed budget to be presented for approval during next month's committee meetings, along with input received from the intermodal planning group meeting, which we had on April 15th. This item is on your agenda today for information and discussion, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Any questions from the committee? Apparently not. Amy, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's pronounced Epley. The A is silent.
Epley, okay.
Yep.
All right, well, I guess you did a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there's no voting on this one. It was for information and discussion only. So we'll move on to item number 9, the legislative update. Nathan, are you there?
Mr. Chair, we're not going to do the legislative update today. Nathan had to leave on a family matter. So
Okay.
We're going to skip that today.
Okay, all right, you want to skip that altogether?
Yes.
Okay, item number 10, any requests for future agenda items? Hearing nothing, are there any comments or announcements from the membership?
I think it was a very productive meeting.
Very good. Okay, well, I hope you all have a great day. Hope everything goes well for all your cities. With that, this meeting is now adjourned. Have a great day.